उम्मीद शहर के इस एपिसोड में आपका स्वागत है। आज हमारे साथ हैं अप्रैल सईद, जिनसे हम बात करेंगे बिजनेस के बारे में, कंसल्टेशन के बारे में और किस तरह से वो ट्रेन करती हैं लीडर्स को ताकि वो डिसीजन ले सकें। देखें, 2024 में सबसे ज़रूरी चीज़ जो आप सीख सकते हैं, सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट स्किल जो है, वो है डिसीजन मेकिंग। तो इसके लिए आज हम उनसे बात करेंगे और जानेंगे कि हाउ टू टेक बेटर डिसीजन। So, hello everyone. Today we have our guest Apryl Syed. She is the founding partner and consultant at Converging Strategy Group. She has so many titles, so many experiences with her name. I don't think I would be able to do justice what all she has done, but I'll give it a try. She has also served as an advisor and board member for Career Rewards and held position of Chief Experience Officer at Wealth VP. Additionally, she also have experience in as the head of global digital experience in advisory services at Bloom Tech, Bloom Reads, while contributing as an advisor and board member of Omni Broadcast. Hi, April. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sujal.
So, how are you, April? How are you doing?
I'm doing great and happy to be on with you here and with a global audience. I do business all around the world, so it's really exciting to kind of be on with you and all of your listeners that I hear are maybe majority women and from all over the world. So excited to be here with you today.
So, yeah, April, as you mentioned, we had guests from around 5 different countries around the globe in our podcast. Yeah. So you are a new addition to that. But April, you uh, teach people how to be leaders. Coming from an experience in as executive level positions, as you have held executive level position, what changes do you see in the new workforce coming into the market, the new people, the youngsters who are graduating nowadays? So yeah, what's their aspiration, what they aspire to be?
I from the ones that I certainly talk to, what I see is a tremendous amount of wanting to make a difference and really wanting to kind of put their mark on something. And where I think there are some challenges that, I've talked to some younger up and coming leaders is how do they present that in a way to maybe a different generation that is in leadership as they're up and coming to kind of present it in a way that they can really understand and hear what the person's saying. And so I work a lot with, younger up and coming leaders on how they can present their ideas in a way that can be accepted maybe by a different generation and doing so in a way that gets their voice heard and also their ideas heard because they have very good ideas. Um, and they really want to make a
April,
difference
why,
and
why
impact.
I ask this question is most of our listeners are young people. I know they're ambitious, they want to create that impact, right? But do you think they are logical about their approach? Because in corporate, if you see people who are hiring them or the executives are not looking for people with uh, that tag of activist, right? They are looking for people who can work hard, are dedicated towards the company. So, how do you think people should they project an image as they want to create an impact with their work, or they should be the typical 9 to 5 guy?
Well, I haven't been a 9 to 5 person in my career, and so I wouldn't recommend that anybody follow that path. I do think that there's been times in my own career where I've spoken up out of turn or I've maybe not presented things in the best way because I was passionate. And I think what I learned from those experiences is that I got my ideas further and more heard when I did present them in a way that was just a little bit more logical. And I actually have a technique that I talk to people about, and it wasn't something I invented, it was something I learned from a leader that I reported to. And that was to present things in terms of three different ideas. So if you are a highly creative and passionate person who has, a great idea, the best way is to actually present it and come up with three different ways you could solve a problem. And if you have three different ways and you have pros and cons of those three different ways, now you might have your favorite. You might have the one you're most passionate about and what you think is right. But even going through the process of creating three different ways you can solve a problem opens you up to things that you might not have thought about before. And then when you're presenting that to someone else, it doesn't become your idea against their idea. It now becomes a way to kind of co facilitate the pathway that you're going to go, because you're pro and conning the different types of ways that you're going to solve the solution instead of saying, yes, we're going to do it. No, we're not going to do it. And either or. And so three gives you more collaboration and it helps bring people along on the journey, get them bought into an idea that something needs to change, and then help kind of figure out, well, what's the best pathway for us to move forward. And so it's a technique that I've learned. I
Great,
teach it an
Apryl,
awful
that's a
lot.
great, great technique. And I I love when you mentioned that you learned this from a person you were reporting to. You were learning from a leader. Do you think uh, presence of right people at right point of time in your career helps you grow as a leader? Because sometimes people are, done with their bosses, and sometimes you get people who push you forward and help you grow in your career. So, out of 10, how much would you rate having a good boss, a person who is a leader, not a boss?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, you don't always get to pick your boss, right? Sometimes you're already working for a company, and I've been in that situation where leadership has changed, structures have changed, and now I'm reporting to a completely different person. And that can be either a really great experience or it can be really not an great experience because maybe your styles are just completely different. And so I've always found that finding a mentor or leader outside of my company who can be remain neutral, that I can go to and kind of like speak to about issues or challenges and get like more of a neutral position, somebody that I respect, somebody who's in a position that I aspire to be in, or has had that experience. I was very, very lucky in my career that I got the opportunity to meet a leader who was outside the business and who did offer to mentor me. And that is actually what I think massively changed the way I thought and my career trajectory. Not having a boss inside the company, because everybody inside the company has their own agenda, they have their own things that they're trying to accomplish. And so, sometimes your aspirations can conflict with theirs. And so it's not actually the best to get your career advice from your immediate boss, because they one might not want you to leave the organization. It might be to their benefit for you to stay in the role that you're in because it makes it easier for them. So it might be limiting for your career. So I always think finding somebody outside that can be more objective is a much better mentor to you and will help you really make more objective decisions, because they don't have they don't have any of those conflicting things
So,
that are
April,
getting in their way.
as we were discussing earlier, I would like to mention that a creative person is always a creative person. You cannot take that insect of creativity out of a person, right? So whether you are doing business, whether you are a 9 to 5 job or you're self-employed, you are the same person, right? So Apple, uh, do you indulge, like, do you think creative? Do you take very creative approach at your businesses, or you keep it to yourself that no, this is my job, this is my work. I'll keep some time for my creative work and pursue those after work or after working hours.
Well, I mean, there is a good portion of my career where I tried to separate those two. And, I taught dance. I've painted on the side. I've done pottery. So I have a lot of those, activities that I've kept separate. But I really think that creativity is a mindset. And, back to the coming up with three different ideas or challenging yourself to come up with, three different ideas to solve. I think my creativity or that creative mindset has just been applied more to coming up to with creative solutions in business. So I don't think about like, hey, there's only been these conventional ways to solve issues. I try to dissect something and come up with maybe something different, which means that some of those are unconventional ideas and some of them are things that have never been tried before. So how do you talk to a leader in your business about trying something completely different and new that has no history of working? And the way that I've learned to do that is to create kind of like a test and learn mentality. And so I always talk to either the leaders I'm working with today or, those that I've worked with in the past about what's a limited test that we can run to prove if this strategy is actually going to work. And if we get positive movement in the right direction, then we know it's working. So you kind of have to think creatively about, well, how could we prove, what would be like our hypothesis of what should happen if we were to put this into place and if this would work? And then how can we test that on a really small scale? If you think of everything as tests that provide learnings, and those learnings then help you perform better strategies or create better strategies because you are constantly in an environment where you're testing and learning and testing and learning and testing and learning, then what you don't get is, oh, I've got this big idea. I'm going to go launch this big, big, huge idea. I'm going to spend all this money and then it flops. And that's kind of what you want to avoid doing in business because one, if you're inside the organization, that can put your career on the line, right? But limited tests have limited spend, limited money, yes, limited results. But if you find something that's working, then you can push the go button and invest in it more. And you have now some proven, results that you can say, like, hey, we think with an amount of certainty that this is going to work.
But April, as we see, most of the new businesses fail in the initial phase, as most of the entrepreneurs who are entering the market without any business experience is because sometimes they are more creative or sometimes they're stupid, just stupid. It's same as a director who's making a movie, but he is so passionate and so artistic that people won't like the movie, right? Uh, yeah. So definitely, I completely agree with your point. It's you have to manage, right? Sometimes you keep work aside. Sometimes you have to use your creativity to come up with new ideas. Definitely, some inspiring ideas for our audience. But April, I would like to know about your experience working in these executive positions because at these levels, you're rubbing shoulders with people who have already achieved something of worthwhile in their lives, right? So, do you have a strategy? Strategy is not the right word I should use. I would say, do you uh, like with an example, you go to a networking event? How do you present yourself there?
Hmm.
Coming from that background,
It's interesting. I think going to a networking event, it's more about listening than it is about telling. And it's
but
about asking.
by the way, as you are a creative person, I know you are not really interested in this. business where you present things to people that you are something, like the self-help thing. Most of the creative people are not interested in this, but you are the exception, I must say, because you have achieved so much in business, and you are a creative person and you utilize that as a skill at your work.
Well, it wasn't easy though. I think I had to learn to add structure. There's a book that I read. My mother actually gave it to me. It's by Twyla Tharp. Twyla Tharp is the choreographer who wrote the hit Broadway show in New York, Moving Out. She did it to all Billy Joel music. And what she talks about in the book is the creative process. And what I learned from reading about her is she actually, when she's creating a project like that, she has a box and she puts all of her ideas in that box. Because as creative people, and I think this happens back to kind of like a creative person starting a business, you can create exponentially. And, when I was a dancer, I would work sometimes with these choreographers that they would just like never be finishing. They would never finish their choreography. It would be the night before the show, they would still be making changes. And so as a dancer, that was really tough to work with because you don't even have things memorized and you're expected to kind of go on stage and there's still being changes made before. And so it ends up coming off not very great. And Twyla Tharp talks about how putting basically confines on yourself or putting a box, even if it's a virtual box around it, that can help you keep your creativity to not exponentially create and create and create. I think the biggest mistake that I see a lot of creative founders is that they create and create and create, and they don't verify and check with who's going to be buying their product to make sure that that person is getting all of the features, all of the things that they want. And instead, they're kind of like off creating and they don't do that circle back frequently enough. Again, we kind of talked about small, limited tests. How can you test a market? How can you test to see if an idea is good? How can you have some conversations that are giving you feedback that say, yes, I should go down this pathway? All of that should happen maybe even before the business idea is created. And instead of talking to your friends or to your group of people who surround you and love you and want to support you, instead go talk to some people who would be your users and who would be buying your product and get really good feedback. And also ask them questions like, well, what would you be willing to pay for this? A lot of times that's missed. It might be something useful, but not a burning need that somebody has, not something that they would be willing to put budget, towards. So there's this balance
Every
of like
time when you
need, price,
yeah
all of these things that need to be made. But the ultimate, I guess the point that I'm trying to get across is that you've got to put some confines around your creativity, or you can just exponentially be creating, and that's not really good for anyone.
But every founder who comes up with a new idea thinks it's the world changing idea. It's the next $1 billion thing, right? So that's where they start from on the day one. Then the second day is, oh no, how do I start? They watch some YouTube, they'll create something. I myself, I started my first company, which is Liberty Mind, where we provide freelancing services abroad at much cheaper rates than at much cheaper rates than the market rate. And I realized it's not an easy job, as businesses nowadays very glorified. It's not. It's a painful process, grinding every day, learning new things, meeting client requirements, and if some problem arises, how do you solve that? Problem solving is really important skill. As Apple, we talked a lot about creativity. I must confess this. If you check on Google, which are the top emerging skills of the future, AI is on number three. The
Yeah.
first two are creativity and resilience. See, so Apple, what's your take on AI? Like you are into books, you are a creative person. What AI has done to creative people is like holding them with their throat. Like people think writing a book, writing something is just is just an hobby because AI can do the same at a faster pace. As one of my writer friend, my friend's father, he's a writer. He sometimes says the director has the script in front of him when he's directing a film. Actor has the script in front of him. The producer have the script. Uh, it's the writer who has nothing in front of him. He picks up word from air and writes something down and creates new things. And you see, the writer is the most important and the most creative process. So what's your take on this? And keep the writers' protest in mind also because it's the thing in America right now. Yeah.
Well, here's my opinion because in a marketing world that I live in an agency, I get comments like, well, this sounds too much like AI, or I get lots of questions like, well, why did you pick this particular headline? The thing is that AI is a culmination of everything that is really kind of like out there today, out there on the internet, right? Um, so some of that content is good content. Majority of that content is okay content, and then there's also lots of
Mhm.
bad content out there. So if it's the culmination of all of that, at best it's going to be average or average low, right? If you just feed in a prompt to AI, what you're going to get back is average. Now, with the ability, to kind of like have some history and memory on AI, which has just been rolled out this last week, now you have the ability to kind of like feed a lot of data in, which I was doing before that anyway. So if you want to get a better response out of AI, you've got to give it a lot of data. To me, it's not about the writer or the AI because neither, obviously, writers on their own have been surviving and doing great amounts of work for years. AI is not going to replace that creativity. It's only going to give what is kind of like already out there, in terms of like
Right.
thoughts and things, and it can only build from that. But if you are a highly creative person and you are feeding very creative ideas into your AI chat that are your unique thought processes and ideas, that particular chat going back and forth could exponentially create different ideas than what you might have been able to come up with on your own. And it is together human plus AI that creates that kind of, what I'll say, one, getting to it faster in terms of the ideas, and then being able to write iteratively back and forth together, and perhaps being able to edit in a faster pace. We're still in the, what I'll say, beginning and early stages. So there's still a lot of mistakes that can be made. You still have to like oversee everything. You still have to kind of like watch the answers
Mhm.
that you're getting back. But it is a co facilitated process, that I believe in, working with AI together with humans that can create outcomes a lot faster than maybe what we were perhaps able to do before. So I think it's speeding up the pace of work. What I worry about, there's this thought process that, hey, maybe we'll only need to work 3 days a week, because AI will push us so much faster that we'll be able to accomplish
Mhm.
so much more, than we were able to before in a shorter period of time. I actually get concerned that the other expectation will happen, and instead of working 3 days, um, it will be now that we're supposed to work 5 days and work at this pace that is so much faster. Um, so it really. it's really going to be an adventure for us to go on to see how this pace increases and increases over time of the expectation of how fast work will develop.
Yeah, I mean, now there are two groups, people who have adopted AI into their businesses or people who are still skeptical about whether should they incorporate AI or should they be doing business with traditional methods. So we'll come back right after a short break. Stay tuned. Okay, here we're April Syed talking about AI creative. Here was April Syed talking about AI, creativity, and much more. We will be right back after a while. We are back again. As we were talking about creativity and AI into the business world, let's continue our conversation with April. So, April, you have experience of working at different organizations, multiple companies you have worked with. What's one thing which is the main factor, according to you, which help businesses grow faster in the modern world? Because new businesses are emerging, and the traditional businesses are having a hard time competing with new age startups, right? So, what do you think is the uh, uh, major, what would I say, major quality which separates uh, growing business or business with potential from its competitors?
Mm. I think resilience is a word that you kind of mentioned earlier. And I think finding, leaders that have resilience because nothing is going to go as planned in business. And that's just we can have a financial plan that's, beautiful. We can have our idea from a marketing perspective of how things are going to go. And then inevitably something might happen. And some of those are external forces and some of those are internal forces. So being able to have the resilience to instead stick to, well, this was our plan, being able to, in the moment, determine, hey, we've got to shift, and being able to huddle everyone together as quickly as you can, figure out those new kinds of tests or new ideas that you have to go and approach and fix to get yourself back on track is basically, I think, the difference maker in, somebody who kind of just stays along their line and their pathway and they're super rigid, and somebody who can shift to the problems very quickly. They identify them, they solution them, they run limited tests, and they don't do these huge, gigantic, big swings on things like marketing. Um, because when you do, you can waste a lot of effort and money without finding out particular pieces of data. So you just have to be really, really able to shift to what kind of feedback that you're getting. And some of that might be creating a different product.
That's correct. And like most of the startups, I talk to startup founders on a daily basis or like a weekly basis on LinkedIn or Zoom, whatever. And they all face the same problem. People who are starting out a new company, the problem they face is making connections with relevant people in the industry because nobody is ready to give them a chance in terms of funding, in terms of mentorship, because they don't have the experience. People who are just starting out in business. So, what tips you would have for people who are just starting out from scratch and want to learn, have big dreams, are passionate, dedicated, but has no one to take their hands in and teach them how to walk?
Well, one, I would read an awful lot. There's a lot of business books, as you can see behind me.
Okay, by
Um,
the way, as of now, we have this thing where we ask the guest for recommendations, like three recommendations that can be anything, books, movies, and I think our audience would be waiting to know your recommendation from now. Yes, please continue.
Well, the book Twyla Tharp's book is obviously a great one. I really like a lot of Patrick Lencioni's books. Um,
Continue with what you were saying. We will ask the recommendation before
sure.
ending the show. Yeah.
Sure, no worries. Well, really reading a lot of books is one way to get a lot of knowledge, but a lot of that is, through experiences of others' stories. But I have a tip for people, especially younger people starting out. You can ask AI to respond to you as if they were a particular book author. So, for instance, you might say, well, Patrick Lencioni, for instance, I really like Patrick Lencioni's books and his principles. I want to learn more from how he thinks. I could then have an AI chat and ask that AI chat, hey, here's Patrick Lencioni. Now, it has to be somebody who has enough content out there that AI can, grab away from, grab from all those various experiences. Um, and context. But if that's out there, then you can then have a conversation and ask tips, ideas, how they would handle certain situations, and kind of get that, we'll say, virtual conversation that will be like at a somewhat level. Um, the other thing is, using LinkedIn, like you said, and reaching out, asking for help, asking for advice. People are actually, yes, you're going to encounter people that are mean on LinkedIn. There's mean
That's an
people every.
amazing idea. That's an amazing idea. Your first idea, which you mentioned, present AI with the relevant information about the person you want to get guidance from and ask AI to act like that person. That's great. So, if I may ask, if you had a chance to meet a person dead alive, to ask for something related to creativity, some creative person, which person it would be, dead or alive? Not AI,
My
you would literally
favorite.
meet and yeah, talk to them.
Sure. I mean, I have a few people on the list, but I think my favorite right now is Rory Sutherland. He was at Ogilvy. So, from a marketing perspective, from a creative perspective, he's just a person that thinks about things in a very different way, from like how to message products and how to really put the magic in marketing. And so Rory Sutherland is definitely at the top of my list. He was just interviewed by Diary of a CEO, who is another one of my favorite podcasts to listen to as well. You can learn an awful lot from that podcast. And there's somebody who's, started 8 or 9 businesses who leads that podcast.
So, guys, as you know I can never do justice with guests like April, where when we have so much to talk about, so many different topics to cover. We didn't touch upon the topic where April has years of experience, which is marketing, but we did talk about AI, creativity, and so much other stuff, which really taught me a lot, and I hope you people have also learned a lot from that. And yeah, maybe some other time we will have April to talk about marketing and all the other activities April indulged herself in. So yeah, definitely, April. It was a wonderful experience talking to you. I myself learned a lot from you. Your three come up with three ideas technique, and the other technique you shared, the creativity technique, where you put all your ideas into the box. That was also amazing, and your overall approach on AI and new technologies and emerging technologies injection into the businesses. That's really amazing. So, April, we end our show asking the guest for the recommendations. We usually ask them for three recommendations. Recommendations can be about books, you can recommend some books, podcasts, movies, whatever related to your field or outside your field. By the way, what else is left? You are a creative person who is doing business, marketing, who is also a reader, and a reader lives 100 lives. You know that. So yeah, so what are your top three recommendations for our listeners at Hope of the New Dawn podcast?
Well, I'll say I'll turn to my, wonderful bookshelf back here for most of
Yeah,
my recommendations. I Tools from Titans, Tim Ferriss. This is an excellent book. Because it's small little chapters and it's all little tips from interviews. So you can kind of treat it a little bit like an encyclopedia. And if there's some piece of information you're looking for, also a great podcaster right here from the Bay
great.
Area
And
where
by the
I'm
way,
I'm at.
for all the non-readers, he also has a YouTube channel, Tim Ferriss. You can check
Yes,
that out. Yeah, and he makes videos
exactly.
about
Um,
creativity,
and
productivity.
he's just
Yeah.
interviewed some great people. I listen to Diary of a CEO pretty continuously. I think that's a great podcast to listen to, and they also have a YouTube channel. So that's also really good. I also mentioned Patrick Lencioni. This is my list of Patrick Lencioni books. The reason why I like Patrick Lencioni is he talks about real world situations. And if you're going to start with one, I would start with Five Dysfunctions of a Team because it really helps you understand what is happening at an executive level in those boardroom kind of discussions and some of the challenges that you can face and some of the proper ways to kind of like push through those. So, especially if you want to be an executive and you want to be in the boardroom, that's going to be a great book for you to take a look at.
So, okay, if you can just recap all of your three recommendations, specifically like
Yep.
first tube recommendation, the first
First was
recommendation
Tim
was the tools
Ferriss.
of
Yeah,
titles by Tim Ferriss.
sure.
Yeah, and
Tim
second
Ferriss,
was the podcast, Diary of a
and
CEO. Guys, it's a
Diary of
very
a
big
CEO.
podcast. He's
Hmm.
based in UK. I hope we reach that level someday. Hopefully, going through amazing guests. Yeah, that's great. And the third recommendation was
Patrick Lencioni. The book is
Patrick
Five
Lencioni.
Dysfunctions. Yeah, Five Dysfunctions of a Team is the book I would start with. He has all of them are great, but Five Dysfunctions of a Team is really, really life changing if you're working in business.
Okay, great. Where else would you find an executive who have years of experience telling you how they learn stuff? Here at this podcast. Thank you, April. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being a wonderful guest. It was an amazing time talking to you. I learned a lot. I hope our audience also learned a lot. And I hope we would be doing this on YouTube because the background is wonderful. Our audience cannot see that, but I must admit that I am seeing a wonderful background. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
great. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much
April.
for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, April. So this was our episode talking to April about AI, creativity, and how to be successful in business, finding a new mentor, creativity at workplace, and many other topics. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Please like and follow Hope of the New Dawn podcast. Thank you for listening.